1970 Plymouth Hemi Superbird, 135 units. Kicking off Chrysler's wild era of aero-body cars, the Plymouth Superbird was built with one goal in mind: to dominate NASCAR. It was a full-blown homologation special, created specifically to outrun Ford's Torino Talladega on the oval. Underneath that radical aerodynamic body, the Superbird shared Chrysler's B-body platform with its more down-to-earth sibling, the Roadrunner, and other mid-size Mopars of the time. Most Superbirds came packing the 440 Super Commando V8, which was plenty powerful. But only a lucky 135 buyers checked the box for the legendary 426 Hemi, the same engine that turned the race version of this car into a 200-mile-per-hour monster. That kind of speed made it one of the fastest muscle cars of the entire 1970s, and even raised some serious safety concerns in NASCAR. Thanks to its long, pointed nose cone and that massive rear wing, the Superbird cut through the air with a drag coefficient of just 0.28. That's supercar-level aerodynamics. The result? A machine that looked outrageous, sounded mean, and went down in history as one of the wildest muscle cars ever to hit the road.
On board the NASCAR,
1969 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S Convertible, 83 units. The 1969 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S was one seriously underrated muscle car. This package added a ton of upgrades, but the star of the show was the massive 383 cubic inch V8, known as the Super Commando. Under the hood, it came with a forged steel crankshaft, cast aluminum pistons, and even a windage tray to cut down on power loss. All serious hardware for a car this size. Plymouth didn't stop there either. They bolted on heavy-duty shocks and a beefed-up suspension setup to make sure the Barracuda could handle as well as it hauled. Out back, chrome-tipped dual exhausts gave it that aggressive muscle car look, while red streak tires wrapped around the Formula S wheels for extra grip and attitude. And just in case anyone was wondering what kind of car this was, Plymouth made sure to badge it up. Formula S emblems on the fenders and another on the rear fascia proudly told everyone this wasn't your average Barracuda. But here's what makes it really special. Very few buyers actually ordered the Formula S package, and even fewer went for the 4-speed manual with the convertible top. That makes the Formula S Barracuda one of the rarest and most desirable versions ever built, a true hidden gem from Plymouth's muscle car era. '69 Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi, 70 units. The Dodge Charger Daytona was the car that started it all, the very first aero-bodied Mopar. Unlike the Plymouth Superbird, which was only built for the 1970 model year, the Daytona actually spanned 2 production years. But here's the thing, it was built in much smaller numbers. Only 503 units ever rolled off the line, making it even rarer than its winged cousin. Just like the Superbird, the Daytona came with 2 engine options, the mighty 440 and the legendary 426 Hemi. Only 70 lucky cars got that Hemi V-8 treatment, and those are now among the most sought-after muscle cars on the planet. Today, even a non-Hemi Daytona easily commands 6-figure prices according to Classic.com, while pristine Hemi-powered examples can climb well past the $1 million mark.
It's sold for
and it's sold for $3 million.
And when it comes to performance, the Daytona was every bit as wild as the Superbird. With its aerodynamic nose cone and that massive rear wing, it sliced through the air with a drag coefficient of just 0.28, the same as the Superbird. That's supercar-level aerodynamics in the early 1970s. The result? One of the fastest, rarest, and most iconic Mopars ever created. '68 Dodge Charger 500, 67 units. Before Chrysler brought out their legendary winged warriors, they took a first swing at NASCAR dominance with another purpose-built race car, the Dodge Charger 500. This one was all about aerodynamics. Dodge engineers reshaped the front grille, tucked in the rear window, and added a front chin spoiler, all to help the big Charger slice through the air more cleanly on the high-speed ovals. The Charger 500 was built to take on the Ford Torino Talladega and Mercury Cyclone spoiler in the NASCAR stock class. Unfortunately, it didn't dominate the track quite the way Dodge hoped, but that didn't stop fans from lining up to buy one. Originally, Dodge planned to make 500 units for homologation, but when all was said and done, only 392 cars were actually sold. Back in 1968, a base Charger 500 with the 440 V8 carried a sticker price of just $3,843. For an extra $648, you could step up to the legendary 426 Hemi. Of the total production run, just 67 cars left the factory with that monster Hemi under the hood, and only 27 of those came with the 4-speed manual gearbox. Those numbers alone make the Charger 500 one of the rarest and most desirable pre-wing Mopars ever built. (1971) Dodge Charger RT, 63 units. The Dodge Charger RT was no lightweight, tipping the scales at around 4,000 pounds, but that didn't stop it from being an absolute brute on the street. With that legendary Hemi V-8 sitting under the hood, the Charger could blast from 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds and tear through the quarter mile in just a little over 14. Now, while it shared the B-body platform with cars like the Plymouth Roadrunner, the Charger was actually shorter and wider than most of its stablemates. That design tweak gave it a surprising edge. Better agility, sharper handling, and rock-solid stability at speed. Dodge didn't just rely on raw power here, they actually tuned the chassis and suspension to make the Charger feel more planted through the corners. That made the RT stand out in an era when most muscle cars were built strictly for straight-line speed. And to top it all off, Dodge added a clever pop-up hood scoop, a direct carryover from the radical 70.5 Charger concept, which helped feed the Hemi all the air it could gulp down. It was one of the few aerodynamic touches from the concept that made it into production, and it gave the Charger RT a personality all its own. (1967) Dodge Coronet W023, 55 units. During the 1960s, Detroit's Big Three were locked in an all-out horsepower war, building high-performance machines that were just as at home on the drag strip as they were on Main Street. One of the most underrated of that bunch was the Dodge Coronet. It started life back in 1949 as a full-size family cruiser, but by the mid-60s, it had slimmed down into a mid-size B-body, the same platform shared with the Charger and Plymouth Roadrunner. But in true Dodge fashion, someone decided to turn this family car into a straight-line monster. The result was the Coronet W023, a no-nonsense, factory-built drag strip slayer. Everything that didn't make it faster got tossed out. The heater? Gone. Sound deadening? Stripped. Even the carpet was replaced with simple rubber mats. Dodge even ditched the windshield wipers to shave every possible ounce of weight. All that weight saving brought the Coronet down to about 3,451 pounds. Not bad at all for a car of its size. Under the hood, it packed serious muscle, and out of the 55 examples ever built, 39 came with the heavy-duty 727 TorqueFlite automatic transmission. And to make sure all that power reached the pavement, most were fitted with a sure grip rear end and a brutal 487-to-1 gear ratio. The Coronet W023 wasn't built to look pretty. It was built to win, and on the drag strip it did exactly that. 1967 Plymouth Belvedere 2R023, 55 units. The Plymouth Belvedere was, in many ways, Plymouth's answer to the Dodge Coronet. But this one wasn't built for cruising down Main Street. It was born for one thing only: domination on the drag strip. Chrysler's obsession with NHRA superstock glory ran deep during the late 60s, and that's exactly why Plymouth unleashed the high-performance Belvedere 2R023, a purebred, purpose-built B-body engineered for maximum speed. Just like other race-focused Mopars of the era, this Belvedere was stripped of anything that didn't make it faster. If it added weight and didn't help performance, it was gone. The radio, sound deadening, even the hubcaps. What you got instead was a bare-bones all-business machine tipping the scales at just over 3,000 pounds. Under the hood sat Chrysler's legendary Hemi engine, beefed up with heavy-duty internals and paired with a brutal 488-to-1 sure-grip rear end that kept all that power in its sweet spot on the strip. Only 17 of these R023 Belvederes were ever fitted with the 4-speed A833 transmission, making them some of the rarest and most hardcore Plymouth drag cars ever built. (1968) Plymouth Barracuda B029 Superstock, 50 units. Back in 1968, the Plymouth Barracuda B029 Superstock was the equivalent of what the Dodge SRT Demon 170 is today, a full-on factory-built drag monster. This wasn't your average street car. Based on the second-generation Barracuda, it rode on Chrysler's smaller A-body platform, making it lighter and more compact than the bigger B-body muscle cars in the lineup. Built with help from the folks at Hearst Performance, the B029 Superstock was a stripped-down, track-focused machine. Plymouth completely re-engineered the chassis, lightened the body, and gave it a heavy-duty rear suspension to handle the insane torque coming from the Hemi V-8 under the hood. They even used fiberglass front fenders and acid-dipped steel doors to shave every possible pound. The results spoke for themselves. This thing was a rocket. The B029 Superstock could tear down the quarter-mile in as little as 10 seconds flat, making it one of the quickest factory-built cars of the era. Most experts agree that only 50 of these incredible machines were ever built, though some sources claim as many as 70 rolled out of Chrysler's secret performance program. Either way, the '68 Barracuda Superstock remains one of the most legendary Mopar drag cars ever made. (1971) Plymouth Hemi GTX, 30 units. By 1971, the golden era of muscle cars was nearing its end. Stricter emissions laws and the rising smog regulations were right around the corner, and they were about to change the game, for the worse. But before that storm hit, there were still a few last gasps of pure, untamed American power, and one of them was the Plymouth GTX. Still riding on Chrysler's B-body platform, the '71 GTX carried itself with a mix of elegance and aggression. Its sleek aerodynamic lines and distinctive loop bumper grille gave it a refined, almost upscale presence. But don't let that fool you. Underneath the polished looks was a beast. Marketed as the gentleman's muscle car, the GTX still packed a vicious punch, thanks to the legendary 426 cubic inch street Hemi, which was, as usual, underrated on paper. The base engine was the bigger but lower revving 440 cubic inch V8, and that's what most of the 2,942 GTX left the factory with. The Hemi, meanwhile, remained an expensive upgrade at $884. But for those who checked that box, they were getting one of the last true Hemi-powered icons before the smog era came crashing in.
Angry. Nice. Beautiful.
1971 Plymouth Roadrunner, 28 units. There was never anything fancy about the Plymouth Roadrunner, and that was exactly the point. Early versions were bare-bones machines with simple bench seats, minimal trim, and in some cases, not even carpets. Plymouth intentionally kept the options list short to keep the price low, focusing on pure, unfiltered performance instead of luxury. But make no mistake, while it looked simple, the Roadrunner was seriously quick. Especially when fitted with the legendary Hemi engine, this no-frills muscle car could leave plenty of fancier competitors in the dust. By 1971, the Roadrunner got a fresh, more rounded design that not only made it look sleeker, but also helped it cut through the air more efficiently. That year also saw one of the car's biggest triumphs. Racing legend Richard Petty took a race-spec Roadrunner to victory at the 1971 Daytona 500 and went on to win 21 more races that same season. On the street, though, the '71 Hemi Roadrunner became an instant collectible. Only 28 of them were ever built with the mighty Hemi V-8 paired to a 4-speed manual transmission. That makes these cars not just fast, but among the rarest and most sought-after Mopars ever made. '69 Dodge Super B, 22 units. The name Super B actually came from the B-body platform it shared with other mid-size Mopars like the Charger, Coronet, and Roadrunner. And while it was closely related to those models, the Super B managed to carve out its own identity: bold, aggressive, and unmistakably Dodge. Essentially built off the Coronet and inspired by the Roadrunner's playful graphics, the Super B added its own unique flair. It wasn't just another clone, it had a distinct attitude, a tougher stance, and enough visual differences to stand on its own. Under the hood, it packed serious firepower in the form of the legendary 426 cubic inch Street Hemi V8. Sure, it was about 65 pounds heavier and rode on a wheelbase an inch longer than the Roadrunner, but that extra weight didn't slow it down one bit. Inside, the Charger-inspired cabin kept things simple, a no-nonsense interior with a standard bench seat and nothing unnecessary to distract you from the drive. When it comes to parts bin specials, few cars pulled it off quite like this one. The Dodge Super B wasn't just another muscle car. It was one of the greatest blends of shared engineering and pure attitude ever to roll out of Mopar's golden era. '70 Plymouth Hemi Cuda Convertible, 21 units. There are a few cars that are completely defined by their engines, but none more so than the 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. The name alone says it all. Plymouth didn't just call it a Barracuda anymore. When it came with that legendary Hemi under the hood, it became the Hemi Cuda. That distinction speaks volumes about what this car represented. Built for only 2 short years, the Hemi Cuda became one of the most iconic muscle cars ever made. Most buyers went for the hardtop, while the convertible remained a rare sight. In 1970, only about 5% of all Cudas were convertibles, and by 1971, that number dropped to less than 2%. But here's where it gets truly special. Only a tiny handful ever left the factory with the 426 cubic inch Hemi V-8. Out of 2,793 convertibles, just 21 were Hemi-powered. 14 of those were built in 1970 and only 7 in 1971. That makes them some of the rarest and most collectible Mopars ever produced. 5 of those ultra-rare 71 Hemi Cuda convertibles were exported overseas, and one of them made headlines in 2021 when it crossed the auction block. The bids soared to $4.8 million, and even then, the owner refused to sell. That's how legendary the Hemi Cuda is, a car so rare, so powerful, and so deeply woven into Mopar history that even millions of dollars aren't enough to part with one. 1969 Dodge Coronet RT convertible, 10 units. Riding high on the success of the 1968 Dodge Coronet, Dodge gave the 69 model a full redesign, and it showed. The new Coronet featured a more aggressive front fascia with flared outer ends, a reworked hood with twin fiberglass scoops on Hemi models, and a cleaner, revised rear design. Underneath, Dodge upgraded the suspension, too, adding extended rear leaf springs and beefier front torsion bars to handle the extra muscle under the hood. Like most high-performance Mopars of the era, the Hemi engine option didn't come cheap. Pair that with the cost of a convertible top, and you can see why Dodge only sold 10 Coronet RT convertibles in 1969, total. Another reason? Convertibles were heavier, and the added weight hurt performance. Cutting off the roof also meant less structural rigidity, which affected handling. So while most buyers went for the cheaper, lighter, and faster hardtop versions, the few who did splurge on a convertible, and kept them in good condition, are sitting on gold today. The 1969 Dodge Coronet RT convertible has become one of the rarest and most valuable Mopars of its time, a reminder that sometimes the least popular option ends up being the ultimate collector's prize. (1970) Dodge Challenger RT convertible, 9 units. The 1970 Dodge Challenger RT was pure muscle wrapped in elegance. Instantly recognizable, it came with a twin-scooped hood, a chrome gas cap, and RT badges proudly displayed across its aggressive body. Buyers could customize their ride even further with options like a rear spoiler, hood tie-down pins, or even a luggage rack, all adding to the car's bold personality. Underneath that sleek exterior, Dodge equipped the Challenger RT with serious hardware. It rode on rear leaf springs, a front torsion bar suspension setup, and a standard front anti-roll bar. If you wanted even sharper handling, you could opt for a rear anti-roll bar and power front disc brakes, a rarity at the time. But what really set the Challenger RT apart was its interior. It wasn't just fast, it was refined. Inside, you'd find tall bucket seats, an electric clock, and rich faux wood-grain trim that gave the cabin a touch of luxury. And if that wasn't enough, Dodge offered a huge list of interior options: cruise control, upgraded radios, leather upholstery, you name it. In total, Dodge built only 9 of these stunning 1970 Challenger RT convertibles, and just 5 came equipped with the 4-speed manual gearbox. That makes them some of the rarest and most coveted muscle cars ever to roll off a Chrysler assembly line, a perfect blend of performance, design, and exclusivity that define the golden era of American muscle. 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi 4-door, 5 units produced. When Dodge decided to turn the Charger into a 4-door, Mopar fans weren't exactly jumping for joy. Sure, people eventually came around to the idea of a practical muscle car, but here's something most folks don't know. Dodge actually tried something similar way back in the 1960s. See, the legendary 426 Hemi V-8 made its debut in 1964, but the street version didn't hit the scene until 2 years later. And one of the very first cars to pack that monster of an engine, aside from the Dodge Charger, was actually the Dodge Coronet sedan. Yep, a family-friendly 4-door with a Hemi under the hood. That move essentially created one of the earliest American sleeper cars ever built. Now, like most Hemi-powered Mopars of the time, the Coronet sedan wasn't about comfort. It was all business. No air conditioning, no power steering, and no power brakes. It was raw, loud, and built for straight-line performance. Every Hemi-powered Coronet sedan came with a TorqueFlite automatic transmission and 3 23 rear gears, a setup made for serious quarter-mile action. Production numbers are sketchy, but here's what we know. 2 were shipped overseas. 2 were reportedly commissioned by the FBI, and that leaves just one civilian-owned Hemi Coronet sedan known to exist in the United States. So while everyone's busy talking about the Charger or the Cuda, this unassuming 4-door quietly holds a place as one of the rarest and most mysterious Mopars ever made.